Hello students, welcome to Legacy Academy. In this particular video, we are going to discuss about a recent threat coming from the Secretary General of NATO, General Mark Rutte, and also by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who both of them have stated that countries such as India, China, and Brazil, who have continuously carried out trade with Russia, especially after the breakdown of Russia-Ukraine war, they can be soon hit by severe sanctions if they do not pause or halt trade with Russia, largely as far as the oil trade is concerned. So let us try to understand what this entire this discussion is all about. Why suddenly these leaders, Western leaders, have begun to use threats and sanctions threats, especially against the countries such as India and China. What can be the possible implications of this on the overall economy of India as such? Now, the warning has come when General Rutte was in Washington, D.C. to meet President of US Donald Trump, and during one of the press conferences, he has clearly stated that countries such as Brazil, China, and India could be hit very hard by secondary sanctions. Secondary sanctions here we mean the primary sanctions is something that is directly imposed on Russia, and secondary sanctions is something that will be imposed on the trading partners of Russia if they continue to do business with country as such. Now, announcing new weapons to Ukraine, that is a press conference when Donald Trump has taken a U-turn and he has stated that now defensive and offensive, both kinds of weapons would be supplied to Ukraine, as Russia does not show any kind of willingness to bring the entire war into a state of ceasefire, and it is continuously progressing in its offensive against the territory of Ukraine as such. And also in the same line, he has stated that biting secondary tariffs of even 100%, even more than that, on the buyers of Russian exports will be carried out and will be imposed if there is no peace deal in the next 50 days, and if there is no what you can call as development in this regard. Now, this is not only the leaders such as Mark Rutte and Donald Trump who is saying this. Even the entire US Senate, we talk about the House of Representatives and US Senate, the Congress of US, basically you can say, we are seeing an overwhelming majority of senators. We know that in US Senate you have 100 seats, so 85 out of 100 senators have backed such legislation that will impose sanction, or basically we can say it will empower Donald Trump administration to impose tariff of up to 500%. You can understand this is very significant legislation. Trump has just threatened with 100% tariff, but actually if this legislation is passed, it will allow Trump to impose almost up to 500% tariffs on those nations which are assisting Russia in its war against Ukraine as such. And taking cognizance of this matter, now General Mark Rutte has given the statement again after the press conference that my encouragement to these three countries, again he's talking about India, China, and Brazil, because again, if you look at the dynamics, all these three countries are partner of Russia in the BRICS group as well, because you have Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So he is saying that if you live in Beijing, basically this message is for the political leaders of these countries, that if you live in Beijing or in Delhi, or you are the president of Brazil, you might want to take a look into this, because this might hit you very hard, against indirectly hinting at sanctions as such. And again, in the Donald Trump's administration, Donald Trump's message, he has given a 50-day deadline that if Russia does not show any willingness or does not take a step in the direction of ceasefire in the next 50 days, then obviously these sanctions would be imposed on the trading partners and such. And the reason why countries have decided to put heavy sanctions now on the trading partners of Russia, it is believed it is a tactics being used by them to force hand of Putin by pressuring countries who import from Russia. Because if you try to understand, Russia is having rich reserves of oil and gas, and it is believed that it is this petrodollar. Petrodollar means the dollar that is earned by petroleum products, selling of petroleum product, is believed to have fueled war machines since last 3-4 years. If suppose the import of crude oil by its trading partners such as China, India, which are the two major trading partners of Russia, if the import is cut down, if the oil supply is cut down, then Russia will have huge crisis, because it will not have enough resources to sustain the war machine. And that is why the sanctions or the threat of sanctions are being given by these Western countries. Now, Russia was not, or Russian oil we can say was not directly sanctioned, as in the case of Iranian oil earlier, because Iranian oil was directly sanctioned. That is why India was not able to import any oil from Iran. But Russian oil directly was not sanctioned. Rather, Western countries have applied a price cap of $60 per barrel. Price cap here means that if Russian oil is being sold more than at a rate of more than $60 per barrel, that means Western insurers, Western we can say containers, or any company will not get involved in such kind of oil trade. That means this is kind of cap. Russia, no matter whatever is the prices, the global oil prices, Russian oil company cannot sell their oil at price higher than $60. That is a kind of sanction we can see that has been imposed. Now, India has so far not scaled back its oil import, again because of the same reason. There is no need for India to do so, as there is no sanction on Russian oil, and also it has maintained that India is going to buy oil from wherever it is possible, whichever country offers it the best prices, as long as the oil is not under sanction. So that is why in the last 4 years, India has been increasing its total import of oil from Russia because it was not sanctioned. But now, if situation changes, India would have no other option but to what you can call as as to cut the overall this oil import from Russia as such. Now, before moving further, what can be the possible implications on India due to this cutting up of Russian oil? We have to. I want to bring your attention to the fact that at Legacy as Academy, we are going to soon launch batches. That is going to be the weekday and weekend batches on the 9th and 11th of August. Now, in these batches, we ensure that every aspirant has ample opportunity to crack UPSC civil service examination, and for that we require a comprehensive coverage of all GS paper, and that is what our focus lie in the course or during the course duration. And we also have one-to-one mentorship and doubt solving sessions, so that the students, if they feel that their this preparation is not on track, they can again bring them preparation on track. They can again put their effort in right direction and do not only work hard but also work in a smart manner. We also have regular interactions with educators and faculties in the class, and to ensure that the interaction can be at a maximum extent, we have a strict policy of maximum 40 students per batch. We also believe that if you talk about UPSC civil services preparation right from the start, it should be done in an integrated manner. That means it should be covering all the 3 stages of your examination, whether it is prelims, mains, or interview as such. And that is why from right from the start, we focus on daily men's answer writing practice. We also have test series so that students can evaluate their performances, and based on the feedback, they can streamline and recalibrate their preparation approach. And as we know that UPSC focus on both static as well as current affairs based topics, we also have 360-degree current affairs coverage and many more features as such. If you want to know more detail about this program and features of this program, you can click the link in the description box of this particular video, or you can download our Legacy app as well. You can give the call to the number that is 96069000004 as well. Now, coming back to the topic, if you look at the change in the Russian oil exports after the breakdown of Russia-Ukraine war, we can see that European Union used to be the largest importer of Russian oil and gas before, but after, in the post-war situation, we have seen a drastic decline. The Russian oil and gas export declined by 87% to European Union. On the other hand, if you look at 2 countries, that is India and China, they have seen a massive increase in the overall export as such. India has increased its import of Russian oil by almost 111%. Similarly, China also has increased its import by 26%. Apart from that, again, if you look at the Western countries, UK and US, we have seen almost a decline of 100% in the overall export, and this has been compensated by increased export to the African countries, where 100% increase we have seen. Again, OECD countries of Asia, we have seen a 50% decline, while Latin American countries, we have seen an increase. That is where Brazil is located as such. So that is how we can understand the change in the overall Russian oil exports in the years this after the Russia-Ukraine war as such. Now, if you look at from the India's perspective, before or prior to the war in Ukraine, Russia's share in India's oil import basket was very low. It was actually less than 2%. We know that India does not have huge reserves of crude oil, natural gas, and that is why for 88% of its crude oil demand, it depends on import as such. So earlier, only 2% of this 88% demand was coming from Russia. Now, in the year 2024, if you look at the latest data, it has risen to the level of almost 38%. And Russia today is the largest supplier of crude oil to India. It even has overtaken its India's, we can say, traditional oil import countries like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. We have very small amount of oil. So Iraq and Saudi Arabia makes or ranks in the 2nd and 3rd position. So these changes are reflection of how we have seen increase in the oil trade, oil import from Russia to India in the aftermath of war. Now, let us suppose that if the threat of the sanctions are to be taken seriously, now most of the crude oil refiners, they are adopting a wait and watch approach, because they do not understand that whether this is just a blank or empty threat or whether it can really be implemented in the future. That is why they are taking wait and watch approach. And also at the same time, they're keeping Russian oil flows robust, because in the event of sanctions being imposed in the future, they want to ensure that they can import as much oil as possible at a cheaper prices at a lower cost. Now, if you talk about the short-term changes, obviously these sanction threat will not create any short-term fluctuations in the Russian oil flow to India. In fact, import of Russian crude oil may rise further amid the tariff threats, as Indian refiners would ideally want to stock up before any tariff action takes into effect. That is a general trend that we see all across the world. Whenever there is a chance of tariff being imposed, the importers start to import much more higher volume of these commodities, so they can actually compensate the higher prices in the future as such. Now, the question is that whether the tariff threats given by Trump or Mark Rutte, will they or won't they affect India? Now, we have to understand this from the perspective that what actually happens in the future. Will tariff threat translate into tangible tariff action, or is it just an empty threat largely being used as a what you can call as diplomatic weapons? Now, for example, also we have to understand that Trump has kind of unleashed a tariff war after he took office as 47th president of the United States, but also his administration is more of mercurial in nature. Mercurial in the sense that first Trump administration imposes tariff, after that they retracts back, again they start to negotiate, again they pause any kind of hike in tariff, and again you have a lot of kind of discussion deliberation that goes on. And this is some same that we have seen in the case of reciprocal tariff imposed by US. First they imposed reciprocal tariff, then again after a few weeks they began to use this as a kind of tool or weapon to enter into some sort of negotiation, whether it is China or India as such in terms of major alliances. However, as far as India is concerned, it will hope that US would not actually implement these tariff threat, because it is in the interest of both US as well as global economy. We know that crude oil can be considered as a lifeline of economy, and that is why if there is a upset in the or there is a disruption in the supply of crude oil, it will lead to sharp increase in the prices of crude oil, and this will cause inflation not only in India but across the entire world. And one of the major objective of Trump administration has been right from the start to reduce inflation, to make life of American people easier, and implementing tariff will do opposite of that. Second, because global oil prices are bound to rise, other countries, Western countries or European countries might also not be willing to go ahead with the tariff implementation as such. Now, let us suppose that in the worst case scenario, if the US indeed goes ahead and imposes this tariff, what could be the possible implications on India? Now, obviously, if the Russian oil directly is sanctioned, in that case, India would not have any option but to cut down oil import from Russia. So currently it makes up 38% of the import basket. We can try to reduce it gradually, and then obviously because our demand is constant, steady, and it's even growing year on year basis, so we'll have no other option but to increase our import from other supplier. Again, primarily we'll have to go back to our traditional suppliers in Gulf, such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, and all these countries. Now, obviously, because the prices of the oil coming from Gulf countries are relatively higher than the Russian oil, we will have to pay higher cost or higher import cost, higher import this value for this crude oil prices and crude oil import. And not only that, because if US directly imposes sanctions that can threaten and that can damage and create a dent in the economy of India, it will also create complications in the ongoing trade deal negotiations that India and US is going on, because again, for India, US is the largest trading partner. That is all about this video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more such content. Thank you.